Hey friends, welcome back to the vlog. This is a bit of a bonus episode. This is an interview that I did with a professional dermatologist, my friend Usama Syed, who's also a YouTuber, linked down below, and he and I are chatting about what it is that makes the perfect productive skincare routine, and he's reviewing some of my skincare items, so hopefully you'll get some advice on this. If you want a deeper explanation, a deeper dive into what makes the perfect productive skincare routine, that's a video on my main channel that'll be linked down below, but this is the full interview with Usama. I hope you enjoy it. All right, Usama, thank you for being on the channel. I wonder if you can just like state your credentials, because I think credentials when discussing medicine and stuff is very important.
I think this should be something people should do before Reels, before these Instagram posts. I feel like that should be a requirement where you state your credentials, because I think so much of the issue with skincare is the fact that people without credentials are the ones who dominate the space. So in my case, I'm a board certified dermatologist working in New York. I did my medical school, everything from the UK, and then I moved out to the US. I did my training at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York, and now I work in private practice on the Upper East Side in Manhattan.
Fair play. And so what sort of patients do you see, and what kind of common skincare stuff do you deal with?
So I'd say mostly I see around the 30 to 50 range, which might be a little bit younger than some branches of medicine, but I think that's the sweet spot where people are taking their health more seriously, but they're also kind of wanting to have one eye on the future, wanting to make sure that they're doing the right things early on in life. So I tend to see in the 30 to 50 range. And the problems, I think what's interesting is almost everyone you know will have some kind of skincare problem. And I've learned that the hard way when it comes to big gatherings with friends or parties with my extended family. Everyone will come up and they'll do the little small talk part, and then they'll go quiet, and then they'll say, by the way, I just wanted to show you this one thing. Or I hope you don't mind, ask you one thing. So I think things like eczema, acne, psoriasis, moles, those are the bread and butter where you see a lot of. And then you get people who coming in for maybe more cosmetic procedures. So they'll have wrinkles and they're interested in Botox, or they're interested in filler injections, or skin rejuvenation is a big thing. So I'd say that makes up the bulk of patients. And then obviously a branch of medicine you don't hear much about in the dermatology world, but you do have really serious conditions like immunoblistering disorders, or you can have different types of cutaneous lymphoma. So there's a really big spectrum. But I'd say around 70 to 80% will be the acne, eczema, psoriasis family.
Okay, interesting. And like in med school, we almost never really get taught anything about skin. And if someone were to ask me, what is psoriasis, I'd be like, oh, something about flaky things. Really, I don't really know. Yeah. And like, especially when it comes to normal skin, we just get taught absolutely nothing about this.
Yeah.
But I do have some friends who feel like, what's the point of skincare? Why do I care about my skin? So what is the point of skincare?
Sure. I mean, my thing is, naturally we live in a more and more, you can say superficial in a pejorative way, but also we just live in a more aware society. People want to make sure that they're giving themselves the best chance of good health long into life. That means, taking things like their diabetes and their blood pressure seriously. But similarly, your skin, it sounds like one of those cliche phrases, but it's the biggest organ in your body, right? It's everywhere. It performs an important function, and it's so visible. And I think that's what I see is, I've worked in medicine before, in internal medicine, done training in hospitals, and I see people with really serious medical conditions, but because it's internal and it's not that visible, they get on with their lives. They don't really care if their diabetes is a bit out of control, because, they can still live a fairly normal life. Whereas I see people with skin disease, and it is so stigmatizing. It's so front on, because it's the first way you interact with the world. Someone looks at you and your skin is right there, right in front of them. So I think that's why it's something which is worth considering, and also because it's a really good return on investment. Like when it comes to what you have to put in and what impact it can have on your, say, appearance or youth 30, 40 years down the line, it really doesn't require that much to make a difference, which will mean a lot to you. You may not think it now, but it really will mean a lot. And if my patients are anything to go by, they'll come when they're 60 and 70 saying, I have all of these pigmentations, I have all of this pigmentation, I have all of these wrinkles, what can I do? And a part of me is like, oh, if only you'd done this one thing earlier on in life, this would now be so much easier for you, and you would be so much happier about it. So I think those two ideas, the fact that skin is so visible, so it's the way you present yourself to the world, and the fact that you only have to do very small amounts of things to give yourself a huge long-term benefit.
Interesting. Yeah, I started getting into skincare when I started looking at things that like small consistent habits I could start like in my 20s that would pay off in the long run.
Yeah.
And you hear so many people in sort of middle-aged complaining about back pain. And that's apparently the sort of stuff where if you just have the right posture and do the right things when you're young, you reduce the chances of back pain. And, it's one of those things where if you have chronic back pain, it's a real like downer on your quality of life as you get older. And equally, I think skin, because it's so visible and especially if you're, the sort of person who wants to be on camera and interact with the public. Yes, in a dream world, no one would judge anyone by first appearances. But as all of the studies have showed, people who look more attractive, people who look younger tend to get more interesting things happen to them in life.
Yeah.
And so, don't hate the player, hate the game.
Also, I think there's some component of it where it's like, it's not even so much that the outside world will necessarily treat you differently, even though they kind of do. It's also about your internal confidence, right? Like the way you carry yourself. Like you'll hear people saying, oh, when I wear this certain watch or when I wear this certain like shirt, I feel so much more myself and I feel so much more confident that I just do better. I do better in interviews. I do better in social settings because I just feel more confident in myself. With skincare, that's huge because a patient will come in with something that even I as a professional will objectively think is very minor. No one else is going to notice it. But it becomes something that's constantly playing on their mind. And they'll say, I've been avoiding social situations. Like I've been avoiding the beach because I've got this psoriasis on my elbow. And in my head, I'm thinking, oh my God, nobody would have even batted an eyelid. But it makes people censor what they do in life. It changes their approach to things. It drains their confidence because they think every time someone's eye flickers somewhere else, they're like, oh, he's looking at my acne scar. You'll start to see that and then start imagining it, and that'll change your own confidence. So I think that's a huge part of it, is that even if other people don't pick up on it or treat you differently, you will be less of the best version of yourself if you don't feel comfortable in your skin. Like there's a reason people have that phrase, right? Is, oh, he looks like he feels so comfortable in his skin. And you really do see that. Like, people who we help their acne recover, and in the medical world, people kind of joke about it, like, oh, look at you're a pimple doctor. Like, we save lives, you save people's skin. But the outpouring of like gratitude and people telling me how life-changing my interventions have been so much more as a dermatologist than they were even in the hospital when I would like do CPR and get someone's circulation back. Sometimes the next day, I always tell this story. The next day, I saw a guy who had like literally done compressions on for 30, 40 minutes. So the next day, and he was like, oh, my chest really hurts. Like, what did you guys do? I was like, just restarted your heart. Like, no big deal. So I just think it's interesting that, patients have that immense gratitude for it because of that reason. You let them become the person they want to be because they feel more confident.
Nice. And I guess when it comes to skincare, it's not just the cosmetic side. There are also like genuine skincare conditions. Some we've talked about, skin cancers.
Yeah.
Is there stuff that kind of someone with normal, healthy skin can do right now to reduce the risks of those developing further down the line?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, that's one of those things where skin cancer, once you develop skin cancer, you physically have to remove it, right? So it has to be a surgery. Normally you have to take a fairly large radius around the skin cancer to make sure that, you've got all of the edges clear. And then you do reconstructive surgery and you leave behind scars. And a lot of the times that happens on the face, right? Because our face gets a lot of sun exposure. It's never covered by anything. So you'll get these people who have scars and have had to have flaps and grafts and all those kind of things because they developed a skin cancer. Whereas preventative measures absolutely could make a difference and stop you developing those things in the first place. And it's a long game, right? It's interesting is we talk to people about who've had like childhood and teenage sunburns, and that is seen as a risk factor for future melanoma 30, 40 years down the line. So there's so many of these things that connect from what you do early on in life versus when it starts to matter when you're 50 and 60.
Okay, awesome. So you're an expert on skincare. I wanted to do a video going over my own skincare routine, which is heavily inspired by, basically prescribed by you in terms of telling me what to do. What does an effective skincare routine look like?
Sure. So I think this is one of those things as well where there are definitely two extremes of it, right? There are those people who are just like, I wash my face with water and I start my day. And then there are those people who have 15 different products depending on the humidity of the outside air. And, I think both of those extremes are unhelpful and unsustainable. And the reality of it is there are a few ingredients or categories of products that are real bang for your buck, where you're getting sustained value from the time you put in. And I always categorize them into three main things: having a moisturizer, having a sunscreen, and having a retinoid. That's it. Those three categories are just the pillars where if you were to do these ROI calculations or your return on investment, they are by far and away multiple fold more effective than any other skincare intervention you can do.
So shall we start with pillar number one? Why should everyone have a moisturizer?
So the reason why moisturizer is important is because the skin's most important function is to act as a barrier to the outside world. Sometimes that barrier gets weaker, and at times like that, a moisturizer helps to reinforce that barrier and prevent things like inflammation occurring.
Very nice. Okay. What's our next pillar of skincare?
Okay, so the next thing is sunscreen, and that'll be no surprise to anyone who's even briefly, dipped into the world of skincare. But I think sunscreen is a great return on investment product when it comes to your skincare routine. And the reason for that is because the sun is constantly bombarding all of us with UV radiation. We don't really think about it in that way, but that is actually what's happening. Is it's sending ionizing UV radiation, and it is constantly mutating our skin cells. All of these mutations happen non-stop, but most of our bodies, if they're working effectively, will reverse those mutations, will identify them, will cut out that little gene code, repair it so that we can carry on our lives without developing skin cancer, which is what happens when a gene mutation occurs and continues to replicate without getting identified and corrected by the body. So each time you're out in the sun and you're getting a tan, for example, it's actually a cry for help from your skin, because that's actually a learned response to try and create more pigment whose role is to protect your DNA. So if you look at the biopsies of skin cells, they all literally wear the pigment like a hat on top of the cell to protect the genetic material. So what sunscreen does is it gives you an extra layer of that protection, so that not relying upon your own pigment, your own melanin, instead we're giving a physical barrier which will stop genetic mutations being created by the sun. And not only is that great for preventing skin cancer, because each time a mutation happens, you're running the risk of developing a skin cancer over time. Also, it prevents things like photoaging, because that same UV radiation from the sun breaks down collagen and elastic fibers in your skin. And again, you can see it on the biopsy, to the point where if I look at someone's skin just underneath a microscope, I can tell you that's a 50-year-old with a lot of sun damage, because you'll literally see their collagen fibers, something called solar elastosis. Their collagen fibers will be broken down, shredded. They don't have that same legitimacy that we have, and therefore you get volume loss and wrinkles. So those are the two main reasons why sunscreen prevents skin cancers, which is obviously important. But it also prevents photoaging, which is the main reason over time your skin starts to have wrinkles, starts to develop different pigment tones. So if you can do something, a simple intervention which will minimize the amount of that UV radiation hitting your skin, that's a big win in the long term.
Fantastic. And what about pillar number 3?
And pillar number 3 is retinoids. So retinoids is slightly less well known than, moisturizer and when it comes to sunscreen, but I think it is as close as possible to a miracle ingredient that you'll get anywhere in the world of skincare. And you hear a lot of other things like claiming that they can do this, and 20 different benefits, but those benefits really aren't backed up by scientific data most of the time. When it comes to retinoids, they genuinely lay a credible scientific case for helping reduce pigment unevenness, helping to minimize wrinkles, help to minimize acne breakouts. They have an anti-cancer effect, and they do all of these things to a level where it's noticed in clinical trial data and on biopsy samples from the skin. So something that does all of those things with minimal to no downside, I consider that to be something which it really is worth your time.
So we've talked about how the 3 fundamental pillars of evidence-based skincare, return on investment, sort of moisturizer, sunscreen, and retinoid.
Yep.
How do you incorporate that into a skincare routine that preferably doesn't take too long?
Yeah.
How does that work?
So I'm all about that. You people think as a dermatologist I do hours and hours of skincare, but I really don't. I think my total skincare commitments take about 2 minutes a day. So what I do is in the morning, I wear a moisturizer with SPF. So I have an actual combined product that does both moisturizing and it has some sunscreen built in there, to the point where I quite like it. So I combine both of those in the morning. And then at bedtime, I use a retinoid, a tiny amount at bedtime, same time as I'm brushing my teeth. And that's it. That is a total of all of my skincare routine throughout my day. And I'm someone who, again, is professionally trained in this, but I think based on the evidence, that is what I'm willing to commit the time to. And I'm not going to do those other 10 things, which may have small little incremental benefits, but which are going to take away from my life. So I think it's a very easy way to integrate it into your routine.
Okay, awesome. What is the role of cleansers in a skincare routine?
So when it comes to cleansers, it's basically water is good at, removing debris, but a cleanser is supposed to kind of help to remove some of the oils that might stay on your skin that are hard to remove with just water. So cleansers come in different families. There are some medicated cleansers where, for example, people who have acne-prone skin may use something with an active ingredient like benzoyl peroxide or salicylic acid, and those are specifically targeted to help minimize acne flares. But the general public may use a gentle cleanser, just again to give themselves the maximal removal of debris building up on their skin throughout the day. So in the morning, you can either wash your face with water, or say you're in the shower, you can wash it with water. Or in my opinion, unless you have seriously acne prone skin, you can use a hydrating cleanser if you want that extra boost for cleansing your skin. But I don't consider it essential. I consider it something which, if you're in the market to integrate this into your routine, great. It will have some benefit incrementally, and you should focus on a hydrating cleanser that doesn't end up stripping your skin of all the oils and leaving you feeling tight. It should end up being very gentle, and in the end, your skin should actually feel more moisturized even after having cleansed it.
I was watching a video this morning from some guy who does skincare advice. And he was saying a cleanser is like ridiculously important because you have all this shit on your face from sun cream and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And if you don't take it off with a cleanser at nighttime, then you're not getting the effect of the products that you're using at night. Any comment on that?
Yeah, so I think if sunscreen was truly that effective at blocking things off, they then wouldn't tell you to reapply it every 2 hours. And if you swim, you must reapply it. And you know what I mean? People say these things because the idea is over time, naturally, some of the sunscreen is going to fade away. And yeah, some people, I think a lot of times psychologically will say things like, oh, I do feel greasiness, or I do feel, say, makeup on my skin. I do feel like I need to remove it. In which case, absolutely, you use a cleanser. A lot of people will use makeup wipes to remove their makeup. And at that time, they will try and integrate a cleanser. I have absolutely nothing against a cleanser. I think, for people who feel like they have oily skin and they really want to give themselves that peace of mind, you can absolutely use it. But I wouldn't say if you're not using a cleanser, everything else is invalidated. I think that's a bit too far.
Amazing. What is an exfoliator?
Yeah. So when it comes to exfoliating, it's a pretty loose word. It's become a bit of a buzz phrase because I know that like the general public really like that idea that, oh, we're exfoliating means we're renewing, we're cleaning. So the idea of exfoliation is just you're removing a layer of skin. So is that a very top layer? Is the layer slightly deeper? That's it, is you're removing that layer and whatever debris might be in that layer, or you're specifically targeting the oils and things like that. So when it comes to exfoliators, you can either have physical exfoliators or you can have chemical exfoliators. Physical exfoliators are things like those micro beads, the St. Ives face wash that everyone loved at one point. So they had that micro beads in. So physically, it's actually trying to remove debris and oil and blackheads. And then you have the chemical exfoliators, which use ingredients like salicylic acid or alpha hydroxy acids or beta hydroxy acids, which instead of physically removing the debris, interacts with them, breaks them down until the point where they're no longer thick and they kind of naturally are rinsed off your face. So exfoliation is okay to do, but way more often than under exfoliating, I see people who over exfoliate and it causes immense amount of problems because people have this idea that my skin's not clean enough, I'm getting acne breakouts, I really must need to scrub this. And they double down and they scrub twice a day, 3 times a day. And what you don't realize is, especially physical exfoliators, but even chemical, they're pretty harsh on the skin because they're naturally abrasive. You're removing a layer of skin. And what that does is it causes inflammation. And inflammation is kind of a key mover in so many different skin problems, including acne flares. So the reason you may be getting really severe acne flares might be that you're over exfoliating, causing inflammation in your skin, which is then manifesting as acne breakouts.
Okay, that's interesting. So would it be fair to say that like level 1 of skincare is moisturize, sun cream, retinoid. And then level 2, if you really want to, would then be incorporating a cleanser into that. Is that like a reasonable way of framing this discussion?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, I agree with that model of levels. And it's one of those things where depending on how much you want to invest into this, there are absolutely incremental gains to be had from a lot of different interventions. So take exfoliation. I tell people exfoliating once a week is a pretty good idea. If you use a chemical exfoliator once a week, it will actually give you an overall benefit in your skin. It will help with pigment evenness. It will help minimize acne breakouts. So you could add that into either your level 2 or your level 3 is do a hydrating cleanser and exfoliate once a week. Then you get to the level 3 and you say, do that, and niacinamide is anti-inflammatory. So maybe use a bit of niacinamide. Vitamin C has a brightening effect. Maybe add in vitamin C and some niacinamide. Completely true. That is evidence-based, skincare. You could even go levels above that and say, that's all great, but you know what? Preventative micro Botox will really stop you getting wrinkles. So level 4 and 5 is, add every, say, 6 months, add in a round of Botox and help to, get some of your volume back with a little bit of filler once you cross 40 to 50. So there really is levels, and I completely agree with that model. And I would say it's kind of like when you're talking bang for your buck or ROI, the earlier ones are going to give you way more return. And then each extra 10 minutes, 30 minutes, hour you spend into your routine is going to give you that little nudge extra, which for some people is absolutely worth it, because they'll be like, my skin is the most important thing to me. I'm a YouTuber, so my skin is everything, and that's completely fair. And then you'll have the general population, and you'll be like, you guys don't need to worry about this, because what I often get is I'll get people coming in looking a bit sheepish and a bit guilty, and they'll be like, Doc, listen, like as if they have a confession to make, and they'll be like, I don't use vitamin C. Right, I mean, that's okay. Like, you don't all need to use vitamin C. That's totally fine. Like, you should use the basics first. So I completely agree with that frame.
Okay, awesome. So when it comes to specific products, let's focus on level 1 and maybe kind of level 1 and 2. So moisturizer, cleanser, sun cream, and retinoid.
Yeah.
How do you think about what products to buy? Because there's like zillions of them on the market.
Yeah.
So how do you approach that?
Yeah. So my first thing is I'll usually default towards a company that has a sterling reputation, that I know does a lot of safety testing, that I know has clinical trial data, and that are very much, their reputation means a lot to them, right? So you'll have these companies where the CeraVes, the La Roche-Posay's, even things like the Neutrogena, you know they're not going to send a bottle of product and put it onto a shelf without having done some extreme amount of testing to make sure that there aren't harmful elements to that. And I think something that's a little bit pervasive right now in the skincare world is people kind of reflexively turn away from that. And they say, oh, I want natural products. I want products which are actually mom and pop, like, organic. It's natural, cruelty-free, GMO-free, gluten-free. All these things are now the priority for people rather than safe and tested on clinical trials and things like that. So I always say, listen, if you prioritize outcome and not so much, I guess, values, if organic is a big value for you, if you're after outcome, go for the reputable companies, because they have massive teams of researchers who do serious studies and aren't going to give you some kind of allergenic product. And I see so many times people come in with having used essential oils or this brand new organic product, and they'll have a crazy allergic reaction to it. And I always have to tell them, listen, stop using that. Use this product from one of the mainstream companies. And again, for reference, I am not paid by any of those companies. I feel like I have to give that caveat. I have no partnerships with any of them. But so that is my first thing, is pick a reputable company.
Yeah, I guess because when it comes to like normal medicine, it's not like, if you've got an actual medical condition, most people wouldn't go with avocado extract or blueberry essence or
exactly.
I don't know, essential oils. You would go for, I want the drug that's been tested, that's got evidence behind it. Come on, let's sort this out. But for some reason, when it comes to skincare, nice packaging, scented in a nice way with like, extract of strawberry is considered actually legit.
Exactly.
Well, how does that work?
It's all branding, right? That's what it comes down to. It comes down to marketing and branding, and especially in the skincare world, you get a celebrity endorsement, right? Or even right now, you get an influencer endorsement. You'll see these influencers who every week they have a brand new product which they swear by. Like, guys, the reason I have clear skin is this. I was like, well, I thought it was the jojoba oil you used last week. Like, I thought that was your secret. Like, how many secrets do you have? So people just look at that and they look at the bottle. Does it feel nice? Does it look nice? Does it smell nice? And is the right influencer using it? Or you'll have these celebrities being like, I use creme de la mer and that's why my skin looks like this. It's like, well, no, it's because that product costs $300. So the people who can afford that product also spend money on lasers and Botox and filler, which is actually why they look ageless, not because there's moisturizer. So you're right. There's that blurred line between consumer market and medical, and dermatology is right bang in the middle of it. And we literally do straddle it, which is why people have these kind of weird ways of framing it. Because it's like, well, it's not medicine. This is just skincare. We're like, well, we're doctors of skin, right? So we're giving you what the science is on it. And I think that's the tension point. And a lot of companies, people will say to me, like, and it's funny, my wife Shireen is a great example of this, where she's married to a dermatologist. You would think if you open her cupboards, it would only be the products that I recommend, and she would be stick to those. No, I open her cupboard, it'll be a rose infused something, it'll be something else with it. And I'll ask her, like, why are you using this? And she's like, I love the bottle, it's so cute. I give up. I give up. This is just not going to work. So I think that's the thing, is marketing goes a very long way. And they learn that there are these buzzwords. And what's interesting is when you're behind the scenes of it, and I'm in a privileged position where I go to talks where a lot of these people from these different companies will be talking about their skincare products. And there's this concept of a hero ingredient, which I want people to be aware of, because it's kind of, funny to hear them say it. They'll describe something like avocado as a hero ingredient where we know it doesn't do anything. But because people love the branding of that product, that is our chosen hero ingredient. Or now CBD. CBD is a big hero ingredient right now, where you'll put that in and then the rest of it doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter if it's tested or not, because the only purpose of that was actually just to be used for marketing purposes. So when you think about it that way and you hear it on that side, you get very cynical about it and you think, oh guys, like, you're even describing these things as just purely for branding purposes. So that's why I encourage people to learn, become educated consumers of what you're using so that you're not so easily manipulated into buying a $70, $80 serum. When my big thing, again, on deciding what products to use, I firmly believe no skincare product should ever cost more than $30, because anything beyond that point is you're paying for the fluff. You're paying for the marketing, whereas the active ingredient and getting something effective can always be done for less than $30.
Okay, interesting. So kind of going back to a conversation of kind of figuring out what skincare product to buy.
Yeah.
Brands that you stand by, Neutrogena, CeraVe, and La Roche-Posay, mostly because of the evidence and clinical trials and stuff they've got behind their things. Rather than, and like, it's like, I use a lot of CeraVe products, and it does look like a medical product.
It does, yeah.
It's not the sort of thing I enjoy showing off on my bookshelf, on my shelf. I'd much rather the thing that has avocado extract, because it just looks good.
Exactly.
But I guess, we need to understand skincare is like a medical thing, and you can have all the essential oils you want, but really, if you care about the outcome rather than the fact it's got oil in it or avocado in it, then you want to be optimizing for the medical stuff.
And what I say to people is, again, like, just do it knowingly. Whatever you're doing, do it knowingly. So if you decide to spend $80 for that moisturizer, know in your heart of hearts that this product that was $8 would have worked the same, if not better, but you've decided based on just how you value things and the aesthetics more important to you, that you're making a conscious decision for whatever that maybe gives off about your reputation or your social status or your financial situation. You've decided to go for that more expensive product for that reason. Cool, I have no problem with that. People do that about watches, right? Like, my watch tells the time probably less effectively than my Casio did 20 years ago, but there's something about the way it makes me feel, so I enjoy wearing it. But I won't actually think this watch tells the time so much better. I do it knowingly that it's for all those reasons. So absolutely, if you want to be a skincare consumer who buys things that makes them feel good because you like a luxury product, by all means. But just know that that's why you're doing it, not because it has some magic ingredient or they know something that these other companies don't know about, chia seeds that suddenly have unlocked a renewing energy. No, you're doing it because you like the color, you like the smell, fine, that's cool. Or you like the way it looks when guests come over and see your skincare, that's totally fine. But for those of you out there who are like, I just want to make sure I'm doing the stuff that will actually help, great, let me give you the $10 things that will work better and that are evidence-based, and then move on with your life. Like, show off about your watch and other things, not your moisturizer.
Amazing. When it comes to sun cream, what SPF should I be using?
Yeah, so it's a tough topic, and what I'll say is there's a gold standard answer and there's a more pragmatic answer. The gold standard answer is, SPF 50 plus, so the number should be at least 50 and over. And ideally, you want to be using a physical blocker. So there are physical blockers and there are chemical blockers. The physical blockers are the ones that have titanium and zinc in there. So that's the tell if you look on the back. The chemical ones have things like avobenzone and all these different chemicals that work in a similar way, but the physical blockers are even better. So that is gold standard, is 50 plus, physical blocker, and ideally you would reapply every 3 hours, and that's what is the gold standard. In real terms, you're probably not going to do that. So my thing is, and there's a trade-off between as the SPF increases and as you use more physical blockers, you're going to end up looking more and more like a geisha with the white, frosting on you, because some of them don't rub in as well. So you have to find that balance between what is feasible and what you will actually enjoy using and what would be gold standard. Because if you have a brief burst of motivation after this video, you go out and buy an SPF 50, wear it for one day and then never wear it again, that's really not going to do much for you. Whereas the things that you can do on a consistent basis are what give you the compounding gains over time, right? So that's why I tell people, if you find an SPF 30, may not be 50, if you find a 30 that you like the way it feels on your skin and you're actually going to be able to use it every day, that is so much more valuable to you than the one that I will tell you is gold standard, which you just hate. So I do say don't go below 30 typically, just because the number you get on there, and SPF stands for sun protective factor. The number that you get on there, you never truly get that level of protection based on how normal people wear it, because it would rely upon like a pretty thick layer of sunscreen like caked on there. Most of us will be getting around like say 60% of that true SPF protection factor. So if you use a 50, you'll actually get a 30. If you use a 30, you'll get a 15 kind of thing. So don't go below 30, and then anything beyond that point, find the one that you like the feel of. Do some trial and error. I think especially for people like us who have skin of color, really it's hard to find a sunscreen that you don't hate using, because you'll be left with that little slight white tinge. You look like you're dressed up with makeup and things like that. So what I recommend for people like us is to use a tinted sunscreen. So you can get sunscreens which specifically are designed to not leave a white cast. And another recommendation for one that I think is great is Elta MD. So Elta MD has a tinted sunscreen which has the right sun protective factor, and we'll put a link in description, things like that. And I think it works really well, where it feels good on the skin, it has a good sun protection factor, and it doesn't have a really severe white cast. So I think that's my sweet spot when it comes to my sunscreen these days.
And is there any drawback with combining sun cream with moisturizer?
No, not at all, really. I mean, often the ones that have moisturizers and sunscreens, they tend to lean more towards the chemicals blockers rather than the physical blockers because they blend better. But I'm not really too picky about that. I think when it comes to sunscreen, I'm of the philosophy of every little helps. And I think that it would be more helpful if people framed it that way. Because I always think about it when it comes to like brushing your teeth. Like imagine if dentists said, if you don't brush your teeth for 3 minutes and floss like, 2 or 3 times a day, it's basically pointless. We'd all kind of give up, right? We'd be like, well, then what's the point? And I think that's what happens with sunscreen, right? Is you hear these influencers, these skincare people telling you, this is how you wear sunscreen. And then you think, well, I can't keep that up. Forget it. I'm not going to do any of it. Whereas whatever you can do is going to help you. So every little helps.
Yeah, it's like in so many other areas of life where just like a small amount consistently is so much better than like, a burst of intensity on one day.
Absolutely, yeah. And this is the atomic habits of skincare.
Oh, that should be the tagline of this video. When it comes to sun cream, what if I'm indoors all day? Should I still be wearing sun cream as part of my daily routine?
So again, UV rays do come through glass. They have no problem penetrating through glass, and so they will still reach your skin. Is it as bad as if you were out all day? No. So the amount of UV rays you get will be less. And truthfully speaking, I don't wear sunscreen most of the time if I'm just casually sitting around at home. Gold standard would be to yes, but I make value judgments all the time in my life, right? I almost do nothing to gold standard. So, why would I do this to gold standard? So yes, it will still help you. You will get incremental benefits, but I don't think it's worth your time if you're sitting at home all day and the window's open and it's a bright day to be panicking about wearing sunscreen at home. One of the clearest evidences, though, that over time it can make an impact in certain cases is often we'll see patients come in and I will see that the left side of their face looks significantly more sun battered and old and wrinkled as compared to the right side of their face. And you look into it in more detail and you turn out they'll be like a truck driver, and it will turn out that they've always driven like this and the window's on this side, and so the left side of their face looks 10 years older than the right side of their face. So yeah, if it's a pattern of behavior where the desk you study at and you work from home is right by a window, then consider, okay, maybe it's worth putting this into my routine because I know I'm getting sunlight pretty nonstop. But otherwise, make your own value judgment. I don't think it's worth it for you.
And when it comes to retinoids, how does one go about choosing a retinoid? Because that's a more niche kind of product area.
Yeah.
So like, how does that work?
So I think what complicates this is retinoids is one of those which really does, again, blur the line between prescription medical intervention and consumer product. So certain varieties of retinoids, which are retinols, the alcohol version of this group of kind of compounds, those are available over the counter. And often when you buy something that's anti-aging, if you were to look at the back, you would see retinol, OL, in there. And so you'll be able to get those in a lot of these consumer products. And then when it comes to things like tretinoin and retinoic acid that are stronger, often they are prescription only. And so you have to get those to your dermatologist or your GP in whatever country you're in. Now, that doesn't mean, I can't get the good stuff, forget it. The retinols aren't worth it. The retinols do still have the incremental benefit. They're just not as powerful as the prescription strength ones.
Any particular brands you recommend on the retinol/retinoid front?
Yeah, so one of my favorite ones is there's a brand called Differin, Differin. We'll put the link in bio. And it contains something called adapalene, which is a newer type of retinoid, which is fairly gentle, but it also has less of the side effects, which are most commonly irritation and some redness, especially when you begin. So it's a great kind of gateway drug for the retinoid world, where you start with a Differin gel, which has this ingredient in there, and then you can build your way up over time. But I think it's great. It has the price point is amazing. It's like $7 or $8, and you're going to get a lot of ROI on that investment. And I think that is a great way to start. Also, La Roche-Posay have their own version, which has adapalene 0.1% in. And I always say La Roche-Posay is like a slightly bougie version of things like CeraVe or Differin, where the price point is not outrageous. It's like maybe $20 rather than 10. But they do a slightly better job of making the bottle look good, and some of their formulations are a bit nicer, and people tend to like the feel of their skin slightly better with La Roche-Posay. So I think their retinoid product is really good too. I also have a whole video about retinoids on my channel where I talk about the different types of ones, including the ones you can buy over the counter. And one of the other ones I mentioned is Neutrogena, has this skin renewing retinol, which also has a moisturizer built in, which I think is a great product. So we'll put the links below for people who want to take a look.
Amazing. What's the deal with eye cream?
Yeah, so eye cream, I think maybe even some dermatologists may have different opinions on this, but I think my opinion, which is the correct one, is that eye creams are not worth investing in as a separate entity. Eye creams are just moisturizers, which are packaged in a smaller tube and where the price is doubled or tripled. So on the whole, even when you look at these eye creams, you'll see that they contain the exact same ingredients. And they'll say, oh, well, the skin underneath your eye is different. And it's true, it's slightly thinner than the skin in other parts of your face. But what's good for other parts of your face in terms of moisturizing is also good for that skin. So I think it's really not worth buying a separate dedicated eye cream. Sometimes people get pigment fading under eye creams because under eye darkness is a very big problem. Some people get it from rubbing their eyes and things like that. Yeah, so in that case, they may buy an under eye cream which has a specific active ingredient like a vitamin C in there. And in that case, fair enough, because maybe the rest of your face doesn't need that, the pigment clearing aspect. So fine, if it's for a specific purpose like that, I understand. But if it is a generic eye cream for the purpose of moisturizing your under eye, use your regular moisturizer. It's definitely not worth it.
All right, so here we have on the table, which you guys might not be able to see, here we have a bunch of the skincare products that I personally use, mostly on your recommendation, but also like the stuff you get in the UK may be different to the stuff you can get in the US. Can you rate my skincare routine? So the first thing I use every morning and every evening is this. What do you reckon?
Perfect. So CeraVe Hydrating Cleanser, gold standard. Doesn't get much better than this. Big fan. It's a great price point. It works well. It's gentle. It's hydrating. Big fan of this. And if I was going to pick a hydrating cleanser, it would be between this and the La Roche-Posay hydrating cleanser, and I alternate between the two of them. And so yeah, big fan. 10 out of 10.
Amazing. Cool. So the next thing I use in the mornings is, and you're not going to like this. This is what I use. I use the Natio Aromatherapy Daily Protection Face Moisturizer SPF 15, which my mum got me. Yeah. And yeah, what do you reckon?
Now, I would hate to disrespect Auntie, and so I want to give that caveat first. Is her wisdom outweighs mine by manifold times, but. When I look at this, I just wonder, why would someone pick this as opposed to the other options that are out there? And I see a lot of things which give me pause. So firstly, Natio Aromatherapy. So where's the aromatherapy kind of, prerogative when it comes to sunscreen? Like, why is that an essential part of this? Like, so when something emphasizes the aroma straight away, I'm a bit like, okay, fair enough, but shouldn't necessarily be the top priority. SPF 15, as I mentioned, the reality of how much of this you put on your skin is you're probably getting SPF 8, SPF 7, which is better than SPF 0, but it still leaves a bit to be desired. Helps prevent premature aging. All right, I don't know. I wonder what that's based on. Let's see. And then at the bottom, orange, lavender, ylang ylang. So good they put it twice. Ylang ylang. You get that extra ylang with the Natio. So, again, emphasizing this nature and, fruits and fragrances and things like that. So then I take a look at the ingredients at the back. Straight away, I can see that it's a chemical blocker. It's not a physical blocker, which again isn't a deal breaker, but it's one rung below gold standard. And I don't see any of these ingredients that could make a credible claim for why it's anti-aging. I mean, unless you're literally saying a moisturizer is anti-aging, none of these have active components that I think would justify that kind of claim. So Natio,
Okay. Well, what should I use instead?
CeraVe does a great moisturizer with SPF. So they have a moisturizer with SPF 30 or SPF 35 in there, which is great. It's called CeraVe AM for the morning. And then they have CeraVe PM, which is just the lotion without the SPF. That's a great option, which will combine both for you. Or the one that I mentioned, the Elta MD Tinted Sunscreen. It also has in, I believe, hyaluronic acid, which is a good moisturizing agent. So it'll kind of be dual purpose for you as well. So I think both of those products will be way better for you comparatively and way more efficacious than something like this. But how does this feel when you put this on?
I love it. It feels really good. It smells nice. I have tried the CeraVe AM one, which I bought on your recommendation. And it makes my skin feel greasier in the mornings. And so is my skin always going to feel greasy if I use a high SPF?
Not necessarily. Like some of them definitely have lighter formulations than others, and so you have to play around until you find that one you like. There are some which will describe themselves like ultra light emulsion, and like there's a company called Isdin, and they have one called Erifotonica, which is kind of in vogue right now, and they have their main selling point. It's ultra light and it like blends in really well. But I think something maybe like an Elta MD as well, you may end up liking better. And that's the other key principle of this, right? Is that no matter who you see online, even if it's your favorite celebrity or influencer, and they love a certain product, if you put on your skin, it just might not feel right? And then again, my CeraVe AM would comparatively be doing way less for you if you're not using it as compared to Natio, which, comes through with the lavender and gives you the aromatherapy you need and a little bit of skin protection. Great. So, ideally you would play around with a few of these reputable brands, a few of these like more mainstream evidence-based recommendations. And I'm confident you'll find one that hits that sweet spot where it works and you like it. And then if that doesn't happen and you have to go down to something maybe a bit off the beaten path, which has slightly more compromises, but which you'll use every day, absolutely go for that one. Forget what your favorite influencer uses. Use the one that you're going to stick to.
Does La Roche-Posay have a sunscreen moisturizer thing?
Yeah, tons. They have a lot of different ones actually. Yeah, so they always have these really fancy names for it. It would be like Tolerain and like Duarain, and they use all these like Latin words for their products. So they definitely have SPF sunscreens as well, which I quite like. But my favorite out of all right now is the Elta MD, so I don't find much reason to move away from that. And that's the great thing is, it may require some trial and error, but once you find one, at what point would you decide you have to change, right? You really don't need to. You hit the steady state, don't change your product. Find the one that you like and stick with it for the next 20 years. Yeah. Just don't mix it up if it works for you.
What about Nivea Sun Protect and Moisturize for my arms and neck and stuff?
Yeah, let's take a look at this.
What are your thoughts?
Is this the spray? Yeah. So again, spray sunscreens barely ever develop a thick enough layer that they're truly going to give you anywhere near this number. So as compared to a cream, a spray will always be less. So that's naturally like, a ding against it. But when it's an area like the body or the arms where you need just some surface area coverage for a broad area, I think sprays work totally fine. And would I, for example, always remember to put cream all over my arms every day and feel the grease when I put on my armrest? And I'd probably end up doing nothing, right, versus doing this. So totally fine with this. If you're going to end up using it and find it easy to spray, go for it. Awesome. No issues.
Okay, what about this? This is the ordinary Gran Active Retinoid with a asterisk on it. Gran Active Retinoid 5% in squalane. This one is a bit rogue. What do you reckon?
No, so this one's actually, it has a bit of a cult following. This has a lot of TikTok fans and a lot of Instagram fans. So I actually think it's a good product. So firstly, the retinoid, we've already been through why retinoids are great. The Gran Active is basically a different formulation where it's supposed to minimize the risk of irritation and redness because of the way they've encapsulated and formulated their retinoid as it's better tolerated. And the squalene is something which is anti-inflammatory. So a lot of people like adding squalene into things that might otherwise cause some inflammation. So no problems with this at all. Great product when it comes to over-the-counter retinoid option. Seems to have a really big following. And the fact that it is a solution is also great because often the people who gravitate towards retinoids have slightly oilier skin. Like you'll find they then have more reasons to use it. And so when you have it in a serum like this, it rubs in much more easily. It doesn't leave your face feeling greasy. So it ends up being tolerated much better. But for some people who have drier skin, a product like this, which is a serum, which is liquid based, will be extra harsh because, they'll put the retinoid on, which will have some of its drying effects. And then they won't have some kind of lotion or cream vehicle, which would otherwise help to add some moisturizing agent to calm things down. Instead, it's just liquid, which will evaporate and dry your skin more. So be wary if you have dry skin, but otherwise, great product.
Okay. And if you do have dry skin, or even if you don't, would you recommend pairing it with a moisturizer?
Absolutely. So the way I use my own retinoid at bedtime, which is the prescription strength one, because dermatology perks, but the way I use that one is I will take it and I will put some moisturizer in my hand, and I'll actually put the retinoid into the moisturizer, mix it together, and I have a demonstration of this on my channel, mix it together and then use that whole product to just apply a thin film. So some people do it the other way. Some people will moisturize their face first, then put on the retinoid on their face. For me, I'm like, I know I'm going to mix them anyway, so why don't I mix them in this and then help get myself an even film? And I find that it helps me get the best effect from the retinoid without getting the real irritation, redness, which makes a lot of people stop using retinoids. So that's what I actually recommend to a lot of my patients. But if you have slightly oilier skin, you won't even need to worry necessarily because it won't dry you out as much as someone else.
Cool. And finally, I recently signed up to Dermatica.
Okay.
For an allegedly prescription grade retinoid because you have to like do some online consultation and then a doctor like reviews it.
Yep.
What do you think of this?
So Dermatica is this kind of like have you heard of Curology in America? So we don't have Dermatica, I believe, over there, but we have similar things which are direct to consumer skincare products.
Like online, fill out a thing,
exactly,
super nice, like advertising on YouTube.
And then they send you a new one every month and things like that. Yeah, exactly. So it's in that same bracket. So tretinoin 0.025% is a prescription-only retinoid. So this is stronger than, for example, the Gran Active here. When it comes to these kind of companies, obviously, I don't know how well sourced and well tested Dermatica are, and similar with, not specific to them, similar with a lot of these other companies, because their whole sell is, we make individualized skincare for you. So we make you fill out your online survey. I have oily combination skin, and then we'll personalize your thing. They all use the same ingredients in the end, which is why a lot of it is, smoke and mirrors. But yeah, so I don't know how well sourced their tretinoin is, because, when you see the name of these ingredients, there's 1,000 different tretinoin 0.025%, right? Depending on what the sources are, what formulation it is, what the process is. So would I trust something like this as much as I would trust a company like even The Ordinary or like CeraVe or like La Roche-Posay? No way, ever. But you can try it and test it out, right? Like if you try it out and you don't get an adverse effect, what I always tell people is when you're using a retinoid at the beginning, it should make you feel a little bit dry at least. If it doesn't even teeter on the edge of making you feel a bit dry, you wonder whether you need a higher strength because maybe your skin is just more tolerant and maybe you need to apply more. Because it should be, especially at the beginning, it should be like, oh, I feel a little bit dry today. Like I need to put on more moisturizer since I started my retinoid this first week. And if you don't feel that, it's probably not strong enough for you.
Oh, so to get a prescription grade one, can I just go to my GP and say, I want a prescription retinoid? Or do I have to spin some story about how I need it?
Yeah, not that we'd ever advocate, but I think in the UK, I think you do actually have to have like acne to the point where they'd be willing to prescribe it for you, and I think you may have to do that. But there may be other workarounds.
Yeah, we'll cut that from the video. Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. Any final parting advice for those of us who want to take care of our skin, but don't necessarily want to go down the whole like spending an hour on it every day?
Yeah, what I tell people is again, re-emphasize that point we made, that focus on things that are evidence-based, that you're going to get the most bang for your buck. Think about those as your pillars and integrate as many of those as you can. If at the beginning, for example, retinoids are a bit of a hassle, you don't know which one you like, do the moisturizer and sunscreen, right? You could even argue they are level 1 and maybe a retinoid is level 2. That's completely fair. So just do the things that in the long term are going to benefit you the most. And all of the evidence points towards moisturizer, sunscreen as being the best for that. Figure out a way to put that in that's as stress-free in your life. And then don't feel guilty about not doing all these other things because there's always a new flavor of the month. Every few months that pass, you'll see something else on your Instagram feed, like, oh, when's the last time you did dermablading or something? And then everyone will be like, oh my God, I've never done, I must be an animal. I've never done dermablading. So to realize, forget all of that stuff. Those are all very, very small returns. Focus on these key principles. And the other thing I always say to people is go to credible sources of information. When it comes to skincare, just because someone has good skin does not mean that they're a skincare expert. And I can't emphasize that enough. You have these people being like, this person makes her own at-home masks out of turmerics and eggs, but look at her skin. Her skin's amazing. Like, no, her skin's amazing because her genetics lend towards good skin, and she probably has a lot of other things going on in her life that contribute to that. And if you use that, it will be an absolute disaster for you. It would be like, if we walked around and saw someone who's really tall, whose parents were really tall, and that person happened to eat chocolate, we'd be like, I gotta eat chocolate to get tall, right? It would be that absurd. But we do it with skincare all the time. We'll see one of these influencers have great skin, and the people use that as like a rebuttal to me, being like, well, you said that doesn't work, but look at her skin. Like that, those two things don't correlate, right? Go to people who can give you credible information and ignore a lot of the BS that's out there. I mean, that was part of the inspiration behind this whole Real Skin Doctor, was I was so sick of seeing these random claims which, people who aren't informed in the sphere assume must be based on some kind of evidence. And even other doctors come up to me and bring up these topics. And I'm just there pulling my hair out like this is complete nonsense. So like, I think be careful who you take your skincare advice from online, focus on the evidence base, and don't let it take over your life. Less is more, and focus on the high ROI productive skincare products.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Oh, final question, which I might as well ask you while we're recording.
Yep.
What's the deal with Botox?
Yeah, so I think Botox is incredible, irrefutable, clearly based on evidence, and would give a massive impact to anyone's skincare appearance over time. And I don't just say that because I have a financial incentive to say this. There's just no way of refuting it. Literally what Botox does is it prevents your nerves signaling to the muscles to move, right? And when you put that in an area where there is wrinkles caused by chronic contraction or, fixed static lines, you will inevitably relax those lines and you will inevitably improve the appearance of wrinkles. And that's why I love doing it. It's my favorite cosmetic procedure to do, just because patients just absolutely love it. And I can just tell them for sure, this will get rid of your wrinkles. So it's a great, great, great option. And the other common misconception about Botox is that I don't want to look plastic. Like, oh, doc, I want to do Botox, but I don't want to look plastic. And the problem is that it's one of those things where anytime you're aware that someone has had cosmetic work done is because they've had bad cosmetic work done, right? Like you'll see them, and if you can see that, oh, they look plastic, or oh, her face looks like feline almost, like what is going on? I don't want to look like that person. You realize that, okay, you're now judging the cosmetic treatment on the worst example of the cosmetic treatment. Whereas those people you see who you're like, what is her secret? She's 50, she's 60, she looks 20, she looks 30, like Jennifer Lopez and all these other celebrities who somehow seem to age so gracefully. And their secret is Botox and fillers, just done to the point where it's subtle. It's not kind of, like I said, feline. You end up looking completely natural. So that's why there's such a public kind of mismatch between the reality and what's actually done, because the people who get good Botox done aren't public about it. Like no one wants to say like, oh, the reason I look so young is because I spent $1,000 on Botox. Like everyone wants it to be like, oh, I exercise, I drink water, I'm very careful. Because why would they reveal that secret? But I'm on the other end of it, where I see these people come in, right, and I do the procedures for them, and I see how prevalent it is amongst men, women, everyone. And you realize that good Botox has just a huge, huge impact. But because it's in a complete different cost category and it's, it may not be attainable to some people, I don't tend to mention it as like, oh, here's my skincare recommendations. But if anyone ever told me like, should I do Botox for wrinkles? I'd say, well, if you want them gone, it will get rid of them. So absolutely, you should.
For you personally, would you be doing Botox every year from like age 29, age 30 onwards? Or is it like once you get to a point where you have lots of wrinkles, you would then invest in Botox as a one?
No, I personally would start much earlier on. Like I'm currently 29, remember my age, but I would seriously start doing it from now onwards, maybe 30 onwards. And very small amounts, right? Though people don't realize is they think it's almost a binary, like 1 or 0 when it comes to Botox. Like you either move your forehead or you don't move your forehead. But it's really not. The amount that you put in terms of your units of Botox injection dictates how much movement you have. So I have some patients come in and they say, doc, I want a frozen forehead, meaning I don't want any movement. So give me a lot of units because I don't want any movement. Fair enough. They like that. Whereas someone my age or someone who's early to it, I would say, do small amounts of Botox, just soften the expressions, minimize the development of these static lines, we call them, and start early, because you will have that, again, the prevention versus, cure treatment thing. It will always work better for you if you start a little bit early, and you have that luxury of, doing very, very small doses just to reduce the overall traction that happens on your skin and prevents these lines from developing. So that's the category I'm in, but it will always sound like a biased opinion coming from a dermatologist. So I always tell people, like, let me focus on the science and how it scientifically works, and then you make the value judgment of whether or not it's a good idea. But yeah.
Amazing. All right. Yeah. Thank you very much for coming on. Can you do a plug for your channel?
Yeah, sure. So, if anyone's interested in evidence-based scientific skincare, that's pretty much what the void I hope to fill is. The idea being, it's a voice you can trust in skincare. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, or just life as a doctor in New York and those kind of things, that's what you'll find on my channel, and a couple of marriage couples videos thrown in there as well. So yeah, please come on over, check out some of my other videos, and if you enjoy any of it, join the tribe.
Amazing. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Awesome. I will say.